Welcome to Unemployed and Afraid, a podcast that explores the glorious mess of building your own business with the people doing it. I'm your host and fellow business builder, Kim Curtin. Thank you for being here. Let's get into some good, honest, small business chat. Developing a business is so weird. You're marketing and learning how to market. You're selling and learning how to sell. You're often leading while learning how to lead, be that leading a team or even just thought leadership. And you're bursting with motivation to do all of the things while then dealing with no motivation at all while being marketed to by a million other businesses that can sometimes make you doubt if you know anything at all. It's this last bit that's giving me a whole lot of food for thought in a world where we are constantly being told what we need to know, learn, and do. Not to mention those pesky false promises. How do we find the authentic voices when seeking what it is that we need in our businesses? And how do we know that we actually need what we think we need? Kate Toon is absolutely an authentic voice, and I'm really excited to share this conversation with you because I just adore her. And as I'm about to say again in her intro, please don't let the name of her book, 6 Figures While You Sleep, fool you. She's a realist that's all about getting out of our own way, and she really gets what we're dealing with. You will love every minute of this chat and be left feeling confident to push forward in your business no matter the stage that you're at. In this chat, you'll hear about prioritizing your financial security, reframing how we view our early work, the state of the online product and courses nation, an argument for ignoring your engagement data, the best approach to getting content out of your brain and into the world, the financial return of publishing books, and how to do business your way. Let's get into it. With me to tell you all about her business building journey is Kate Toon, an award-winning business mentor and digital marketing coach, who's also an author, podcaster, speaker, and a bookshop owner. She's a down-to-earth human on a mission to demystify the realities of running a successful online business, helping us cut through the noise with the realities and potential of working outside of the time for money model. Her Stay Tuned group of companies include the Digital Marketing Collective, the Recipe for SEO Success, the Clever Copywriting School, and the Umina Beach Book Nook. And the title of her own most recent book is called 6 Figures While You Sleep. But don't let the title fool you. Kate is redefining passive income, teaching how and why to automate digital products and serve many customers with a single product. Here's the quote that made me want to get a little deeper inside the business and growth journey of Kate Toon. The secret to building a 6-figure business in your sleep is not about being a next-level genius or having some mind-blowing big idea. It's about being a few steps ahead of your customer, appreciating and embracing the skills you already have, and finding ways to use them that are different, innovative, and profitable. In a social media world of income flexing and lifestyle marketing, Kate might just be a real human light and voice. And I am so excited to hear about how she's worked her way through the learnings to get here. Kate, welcome to Unemployed and Afraid.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. Yes, I am a real human. So we'll see how human I can be on this podcast.
You set me up there beautifully. I think we're going to have a very fun chat, and I'm so glad to have you here. Help us get to know a little bit about the amazing human you are. How would your best friend describe you?
Oh, gosh. Well, my best friend is my dog, so he would probably not say much. I think they would say that I am creative, generous, slightly manic, and very loving. I think I'm a very loving individual. I'm quite a giver, despite years of possibly evidence that I shouldn't be. But I guess, creative, I think. I'm full of ideas. I'm full of enthusiasm until I'm not. And then I'm an absolute horror to be around. Lock me in a cupboard and leave me on my own. That was a big question. I had to really think about that.
I think my dog might be my best friend too. She's pretty special. I ask this as a completely personal question. Listeners going to be like, Kim, can we get into this? But I agree with that whole having a lot of ideas and chaotic thoughts going that have to get down. How do you go with execution? What's your out of brain into real life kind of process?
I mean, I think that's the difference. That's the difference. I am very good at executing. My background prior to starting my own business was in project management. So I worked in ad agencies as a producer. So I was in charge of managing the creative resources, managing the time and the budget, deciding what everyone was going to do, attributing tasks. So I'm very organized, very process driven, and very able to take a giant project and see how to slice it into doable chunks. I'd say that's possibly my superpower, because I think there's a lot of people who have ideas, but yes, turning those into reality is a different matter.
That is quite the superpower. I think it's one that so many of us will envy, that that's a natural superpower for you. As I mean, maybe I'm just speaking for myself. I look at all the things I need to create and I think, hell, the bloody hell am I going to get from here to here? So before your current kind of one-to-many business model, you had a different model. Tell me a little bit about that. Who were you before the Kate Toon of today?
Who was I? That's an existential question. So look, I left advertising world when I got pregnant. It wasn't a brave move or a particularly well thought out one. I just couldn't keep the job. So I started a small business. In the beginning, doing everything. I built some terrible websites. I designed some logos in PowerPoint. I apologize to those people. But mainly it was copy. It was always about writing. And then very quickly I saw there was a gap with writing to please the Google gods, SEO copywriting. So I niched down into that and then started doing a bit of SEO training. You know, and I was doing well, probably about five or 6 years in. I was definitely in the six figures. I had full roster of clients. I was working as many hours as I could with a small child, 5-year-old or whatever. And things were good, but I was bored and I didn't have any more time. So I had reached a cap on my income. And it's not that I'm greedy, but I wanted financial security. I've always very much worried about being eaten by cats in a flat when I'm 72. I don't even like cats. So as I always joke, there'd be someone else's cats, which is even more humiliating. So I just really wanted to have financial security for myself and my son. And that drove me towards finding different ways of selling exactly the same thing to different people, you know, different formats, and diversifying my income streams.
So this is a little while ago that we're talking about. Of course, you know, us, the humans, the business builders of today, we might look at that sitting in a service model going, okay, like how do I, passive income feels like it's in the dictionary. Like I'm surprised it hasn't been, the word of the year at some stage. Passive income, digital products, all of those things. I'm so surprised it hasn't turned up there. But this is before that, this is you facing this idea or this dilemma before all that. So when you sat down to think about how to do that, what was your process? What was your thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel like a bit of a dusty pioneer. When I launched my first course, it was an SEO course. There were no other SEO courses in Australia. There was only one other SEO course in the world run by a woman. So it was definitely a gap. Now there's hundreds. And I went to an SEO conference last week, and the audience, I'd say, was nearly 50% female SEOs. I was usually the only female in the room. So it did feel pioneering. And also, courses was something that were taught by university and colleges. They weren't taught by individuals necessarily, unless you were a teacher or you had a coaching qualification, neither of which I had. So I started off by offering one-on-ones. So instead of doing it for people, doing it with them. And then I started doing sort of day-long workshops, teaching people stuff. And 8 hours in a day lends itself very easily to 8 weeks in a course. So that was the model I took. I took something I'd taught face-to-face and turned it into videos and online modules for a course. And I will say, back in 2015, when I made Recipe for SEO Success, it was dreadful. Do you know what I mean? The video quality was awful. PowerPoints were poor. But the price reflected it. Back then, it was only about $400, and now it's over $3,000. So it was minimal viable product that I went live with, sold it to 20 people who are my closest colleagues, friends, people I'd probably already worked with. And then it went from there. So yeah, that was my process.
I laugh when you say it was quote unquote awful, your first iteration, because whenever I hear that from someone, I just think how much of a universal feeling that is, whatever we put out into the world. Like, you scroll far enough back on anybody's personal or private Instagram page and see those funny little like images we took with the weird filters. But, I think about my first few podcast episodes only 3 years ago, and they're awful. And if I listen back to them, I feel really angry at how awful they are. It is so much of how we get started, just hating what we do in retrospect, but using that to get better. So I think it's a quite a generous share to admit that we're
Yeah.
actually in that space.
But the other thing is, I think sometimes we judge ourselves very harshly, because I'm sure if I went back and listened to those early episodes, I wouldn't think that. And sometimes I'm like, gosh, I really should update this bit of the course. It's 2 or 3 years old. And I go back and watch it and I go, God, I was good. That was actually really good. You know, and so I think we judge ourselves very harshly and think just because something's old or because we did it near the start of our journey, it doesn't have as much value now that we're so wise and mature and experienced. But sometimes that early content is full of enthusiasm and vigor and life that we lose over time as we become jaded old crones. So, yeah, I think it's a mix of the two. We shouldn't be too harsh on that early iteration of ourselves.
It's a really great point. So when I think about this kind of business model, and you even touched on it there a little bit with what you shared, you know, you sold it to your kind of closest network, friends, family, colleagues. How great are they in the early doors? But becoming the person who sells that is such a journey in and of itself. So you're either an employee or you're kind of working for yourself in a service model. But then going into essentially what I view a lot of passive income models to be is like you're a full-time seller. You are selling yourself. You are marketing yourself, and that is an intense experience. What has your experience been like with that?
Yeah, so I try very much not to see it that way, because I'm not a seller. I remember when I was very young, I sold aerial photographs on a council estate in Liverpool, door to door. It was horrific. I managed to last about 2 hours. So I feel like I am, you know, the way that it's a bit cheesy, that someone has a disease and you are the cure. Someone has a problem and you are the solution. So you're not selling things to people who don't want it. You're explaining something they want in a way that they get, and you're offering them reassurances and affirmations that the purchase decision they're about to make is a good one. And how do you do that? By sharing your experience, by sharing case studies and trust with it's not hard sell or soft sell. I don't use many sort of FOMO tactics or guilt and fear tactics. I'm like, look, it's a course, it's 8 weeks long. This is what you'll have by the end of it. Here are some people who've done it before who liked it. Bada boom, take it or leave it. So that's the way I approach it. And obviously I also have a very slippery funnel, which obviously is obscene, but it works very well.
Tell me more about this slippery funnel, just because I wanted to say the word slippery funnel mainly, but
just tell me funnel. That's the hashtag for the episode. So, you know, funnel, again, sounds like a dirty word and like some kind of trickster sales tactic. But really, it's about taking someone who's unaware to someone who's obsessed. You know, like when you sort of do discover something, suddenly it pops up everywhere, you know. So you're thinking you would love to buy a new bike and you're not sure which bike. And at the beginning, you're like typing into Google things like, which bike is the best bike? And you're looking at pictures. And then after a while, you become a little bit set on a couple of different brands. And now you sign up to the newsletter or you watch some TikToks and videos about that bike. And then you're like, well, okay, I'm getting keen now. I want to read reviews. If other people bought this, what did they say? And you start to do comparison. And then after that, you're kind of a bit keen. And then it becomes about price. And can you afford it? And when can you afford it? And does it have everything you want? So you're always in a funnel, every purchase decision you make, unless you're a bit squiffy on Instagram at 10 o'clock at night and you see a nice pair of leggings and then you just buy it and you go straight from unaware to purchase and the funnel just slips away. But generally, all of us are in some kind of funnel at the moment with somebody. We're near to buying, but we're not ready yet. And it's just about, again, evidence, proof, relationship, trust. Sometimes you buy something just because you like the cut of someone's jib. And sometimes you won't buy something just because someone's nostrils annoy you, you know? So it's just about cutting the wheat from the chaff. Marketing is as much about diverting people away from you as it is about attracting. Not everyone's going to love you, and that's okay.
I really like that last part that you just emphasized about pushing away the people that don't want to find your crowd. I think in an environment where so many people are selling, and I will digress and tangent a little bit myself to say I believe the word selling or being a seller has a huge branding problem because it's such a positive and empowering thing to do. And you know what you just described is selling, but it just has such a branding problem. It's like veganism. It's just like it needs a rejig of the branding. But we all spend so much time marketing ourselves in social media spaces that, you know, we get kind of obsessed with that. Oh, did the follower number just go down when I just posted that piece of content? And, you know, that sort of like self-fulfilling prophecy of I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. But it's like, no, great. See you later. See ya, because 15 more of the right people will come because I've put out this content. I really like your reframe of that.
Yeah, I'm also a slight believer in being a contrarian and not necessarily being controversial for the sake of being controversial. But, you know, again, a cheesy analogy, but if you asked a room full of 100 people what their favorite ice cream was, I'd say very few of them would say vanilla. You know, it's going to be this particular type that they had that reminds them of this, or a taste they like. It's going to be something obscure and odd. And so you can be vanilla and have loads and loads of people be vaguely indifferent to you. Or you can be mint chocolate chip with golden syrup on top, and only 5 people will like you, but they will love you. You'll be their favorite. And I'd rather be someone's favorite than someone's vanilla.
Oof, I really like that. If I ever felt my confidence fading in my choice of title for this podcast, that's gonna re-employ my confidence. So, look, thinking about content creation, I think about that with businesses like yours and how much content you create, from courses to slippery funnel stuff to writing books. It is so much content creation. What does that creation period look like for you?
Well, look, I think I'm an abundant creative. That's just my mentality. So I'm actually restraining myself from sharing. I've already shared 3 pieces of content today on the bookshop Instagram, and I'm like, don't do another one. Don't. But I've already got it here ready to go. Right. So lots of ideas, but also absolute lack of self-criticism. I never look at the data at all. So I don't care if people engage or not. Don't care. I enjoyed making it. I think it's good. That's good enough for me. I'm on to the next thing. Again, minimal viable effort, right? We made a TikTok today. Was the audio perfect? Did it match the lip sync? No, but honestly, who cares, right? I don't judge individual pieces of content by their own worth. I see it more as wearing people down. Like, just keep watching my stuff. And at some point you'll be like, Kate, please stop. I'll just buy your thing. And so that works well. But also, I'm disciplined. Writing the book took about 6 to 8 weeks, the second one. The first one took 6 weeks. And I just said to myself, I'm going to sit at my desk for an hour and a half each morning. Whatever I write in that time, I write. But I'm going to sit at my desk for that hour and a half every day, whether I feel like it or not. And, if you want something, there has to be some kind of give, And so I suffered for a short period getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to have now a published book. So you're not going to get it without a bit of grit. Do you know what I mean? So discipline and complete lack of care are my content creation strategies.
Gosh, you've just given me so much hope hearing that a book can be written in 6 to 8 weeks with some discipline. I've got about 3 or 4 sitting in me, just percolating, just waiting for their time to be out in the world. And that has actually given me some hope that the discipline could actually be there.
Yeah, because the thing is, the topic so well. So once you give yourself the space and say, I'm going to do it, it will flow out. It won't flow out immediately. And you will have some mornings where you sit there and you write like 3 words. But the other thing is that lack of care. I do not go back and reread what I already wrote. I move forward, not backward. So I never reread. I try and get a complete first draft done before I go back to the beginning and read again. The constant self-editing and self-reviewing is not a good idea. I also used a layered approach for my book. So I wrote a chapter. I gave it to my mum and dad first because they're my gentlest critics, who tidied it up and asked a few questions. Then I would make those tweaks and send it off to someone else while writing chapter 2. Then chapter 2 would go to mum and dad. By that point, chapter 1 had come back and I'd send it to a slightly harsher critic. And so it was always layering over the top of each other. And I'd start the day by doing a few simple amends and then I'd write. And so it is a bit of a strategy, but yes, it does work.
That's a brilliant strategy. It makes a lot of sense to me. What has publishing your books, because this is your latest book and it's a great one, but you have previous books, of course. What has that done for your business?
Well, look, the first couple of books I published, I did a kids book and another business book I self-published, partially because the first book I got an agent for, but it got rejected. The second book, to be honest, I didn't have the guts to go for an agent or a publisher. I wanted to write it and I was fearful of rejection, so I just wrote it myself. And it didn't do a huge amount. I felt very proud of it. I could show off a little bit, but it didn't feel like an achievement. The next book, 6 Figures in School Hours, I did get a publisher, the publisher I wanted as well, which was very exciting. Again, it didn't do a lot for my business. It sounds weird, right? Because I didn't have a product at the end of it. So it was about, how to be a parent and juggle your business, but there was nothing to sell afterwards. And publishing a book is expensive. Even with a traditional publisher, it's expensive. This book I wrote with the end in mind. So there is a program at the end of it. There is resources and additional things. So this book, off the back of the book, I probably made 80, 90, 100 grand from the program that went with the book. Whereas the first book, I probably spent 60 grand and made no return. I had a lot of good parties. I got to show off and I had my photo in the airport. But this one, I wanted it to be a money maker, not just a money burner.
I really love, which is why I was so looking forward to talking to you today. I really love your honesty around money. It's something I talk about every episode in this podcast, whether my guest feels ready to talk about it or not. I'm always trying to find my ways to bring it up into conversation because so much of this is hidden behind funny little walls of self-protection or classism or whatever else holds us back from talking about money, which I find so incredibly frustrating because when you're building a business, you have none of it for such a long time for so many of us. Not therapy for me, but it is a transition, and there's so much of the work that you do or the outlay that you put into something comes back in weird ways and fruitful ways later on, be it through the learnings you had or just how it gets picked up later on to come into your business. Obviously a much different model than a service base where you find a client, you service a client, you get paid. How were you able to confidently transition yourself from service base into more of this kind of selling, payoff, long-term kind of thinking?
Slowly. I talk about in the book that it's not a get rich quick scheme, it's a get rich slow scheme. So I took a step back. So in about 2015, when I started building some of my own passive income, I did see a big drop in my income. I share all my income figures in the book and the money I spent to make the money as well. So I took a step back. I earned less money for a year, and that was very difficult. And then I had a big leap forward, but I didn't give up the copywriting. So it took 3 years until I literally had no clients. And then a couple of years later, I did a couple of copywriting jobs just to keep my hand in. So I'd probably say for the last 3 years, I've had no clients whatsoever. But I did keep a safety blanket. And look, I think talking about classism and income and all that is important. I'm from working class. My dad was the first person in our family to go to uni. I was the second. No generational wealth, no parental support, no rich partner. And so there's a degree which I had to make it work because I needed the money. And I probably made decisions that I wouldn't make again. Like I made sacrifices, this time with my son that I will never get back, that I regret. And I was so desperate to get the money that sometimes I made foolish choices and worked too hard. But now I'm like, why not talk about it? Because I know that to many people, my income level is nothing. They would laugh and be like, is that all you're making? But to me, it's brilliant. To me, I'm really happy. And if I'm happy, that's all that really matters, isn't it? No one can erode my sense of financial well-being because it's my sense of financial well-being. So, I don't care what you think is a lot of money because I'm happy with my money. Does that make sense? I'm babbling like a baboon.
It makes a lot of sense. I think it's so much about reframing the conversation you have with yourself about not what you want, but what you need.
Yes.
And that's so unique to each of us and just looks so different. And unfortunately, what's modeled to us is, extraordinary, excessive wealth in so many circumstances. And that might be what somebody desires. Fantastic. Hey, I wouldn't say no to it. But, it's definitely about deciding what is it that we're happy with? What do we need to feel truly, truly happy and safe and supported? Obviously, so much of our foundational need is in safety and security. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Not baboon-like at all.
Okay, good.
I want to know how your experience in the digital product landscape, which has been, you've seen the rise, you've been a part of that, you've grown that rise. What are you seeing as a change in the industry at the moment? What's frustrating you about it? What's making you happy?
Yeah, it felt in the early days a struggle because the consciousness of this whole arena didn't exist yet, that you can do courses, you can have memberships and masterminds. It wasn't a thing, right? So you weren't just selling your thing, you were selling the concept in general. Like, oh, imagine joining a business group that's completely online and you pay a monthly fee for it and you never get to meet anybody. Weird, right? So at the beginning it was a hard push. Then there was like a golden age where it felt like I could put anything out. I remember I sold my SEO course out in 8 hours. I made $150,000 in one day, which is astronomical. Obviously, I still had to finish up and pack the dishwasher and do exactly the same thing the next day. But it was amazing, right? Those days have gone for me. They've gone for me. They may not have gone for other people, but for me, they've gone. A, I don't have the energy. And B, I'm not sure the market is there in the same way that it was and after COVID and the global economic climate. These days, I think, digital downloads and templates are a bit harder with the existence of AI and Magi and ChatGTP. We can make our own templates. We don't need other people to help us as much as we did. So I think they're losing a little bit. I think courses are struggling because of low completion rates and lack of engagement. So many course platforms. A good course lives or die by the support in the community. It's got nothing to do with the content. It's the support in the community. Memberships, I still think work, but there are a lot, and there's very few points of difference. The thing that I'm finding working well at the moment is that people really would like to work with you one-on-one. So how can you just, I mean, not, it's one to many, but it's a smaller many. So instead of maybe me getting 80 people on the course, working with, at the moment for my program, I've got 15 people paying a higher price, but having a much more intimate experience. And that's what you would call a mastermind. But I must say as well, that's the evolution. You do your templates, then you build a course, then from the course you do a membership. And then once you've got a membership, you can sell a mastermind. So maybe it's simply that I'm at the end of the path and that's my path. Someone else could launch a course tomorrow and go great guns. Maybe that's my lived experience and not the market. So I'm cautious not to, make my experience the world's experience, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I really do. And I really appreciate that insight, because I think, like so many of us, as small business owners, I think we get marketed to about courses and workshops and masterminds probably more than the usual person, than the average person. And I know, just for myself, you talked about being at certain phases of said slippery funnel. I feel like I'm in about 55 people's funnels. Given my entire industry is in podcasting, I'm learning from someone about, insights into brand-led podcasts, and then I'm learning about, things over here, and then somehow I'm in some digital marketing funnel, and I just don't know where I am. And so that, that can be, pretty overwhelming, I think, for us. I think we, as small business owners, want to learn as much as we possibly can. But yeah, that completion rate, there's so many things that are kind of pointing to overwhelm. So I think being able to frame it like that, to be it might not be everything that you do, the course that you create, for anyone who's thinking about this, it might not be the thing that you do forever that makes you, completely financially free in the next minute, but it is one part of a bigger cycle. I think it's a really healthy way to look at it.
Yeah. And I think a really important thing that you brought up there is the noise. I think once you do make the decision that you want to move from being a supplier or a worker and be somebody that sells one to many, you need to get out of everyone's funnel. You need to switch off all your marketing, unfollow every peer, leave every group, and stop learning. Stop learning. Don't learn another goddamn thing until you have taken what you have learned and made it into something that helps other people learn. Because people live in a potential land of a perennial land of learning, and they never implement, or they never pass on what they've learned because they're like, it's not good enough. I need to learn more. I will be a successful podcaster when I've done this course and this course and this course. You already are a successful, not you, but one. You've already got further than most people have got. And the message of the book is not that you need to be miles ahead of people. You just need to be a bit further ahead. If I wanted to learn how to be a brilliant singer, I wouldn't try and work with Beyonce. I'd probably work with a local singing coach around the corner. Do you know what I mean? I want to be that much better. Then I'll get better and better and better. But I think too many of us just stay in the land of learning. We never even get into doing. And if you don't do doing, then you'll never be able to teach.
Oh, brilliant advice. I'll be cutting that one out to probably listen a few mornings in a row. Just a little soundbite for me. I think we've all experienced income flexing and overwhelm of marketing from some dodgy characters that are out there. And the reason we're talking today is because you are, in fact, not a dodgy character. You actually get it. You're actually doing this, and you're speaking about it so honestly, which is wonderful. But how do you feel about those individuals, what they're doing for your industry? What's your opinion on them?
Yeah, I think if you are selling the idea that you're helping people make money, then you have to prove that you've made money, right? I don't want to be learning how to make money from someone who's poor, who's skint. But I think that often people will share their revenue and they will not share the expenses. And the only figure I really care about is your profitability. So you could make 20 grand a year, but if you're keeping 19 of that, that's amazing. I know many people who earn 200K a year and they're keeping 19 of that, right? So all this effort and all this flapping your arms around to make the same as the other person. So I think also, people say, I'm multi six figures. Well, that could be 200K or it could be 990, it's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. And you stated it so well earlier when you said, we all obviously want to have enough money to be secure, to be happy, to maybe pass on a little bit of generational wealth, not too much, because we don't want our kids to become wankers. Do you know what I mean? But we want them to have a slightly better experience than we did. But that's enough, right? The biggest thing for me over this last few years has been working out what is enough, because otherwise I'm never going to stop. I'll be working until I'm 92 because I have no boundaries. So I think income flexers do it because they're trying to prove that they can do that for you. But they don't often share the true figures and the true costs behind the figures, not just the financial costs as well, the emotional costs, the mental health costs. A lot of the entrepreneurs, especially the female entrepreneurs I see online, when you meet them in person, they are deeply unhappy. They are working way too hard. They are planning their day in 2-minute increments. Yes, they're flying off to Acapulco to some retreat, but on the flip side, they're, I don't know, drinking too much, taking meds, whatever, right? And so there's an emotional cost as well that isn't often shown by the income flexes. That was very full on, but do you know what I mean? I think it's a big problem to not show we can all earn a lot of money, but at what cost?
I don't think that was too much at all, because that's such a reality. And when we're building anything, no matter if that is a digital product or a physical product or whatever it is that we're building, it could be a creator-led product, there is different layers of expense, and whether that be your sleep, whether that be your relationships, the quality of your mental health, the quality of the food that goes in your body. Like, there's just so much of that. And I've definitely been guilty in those more challenging times where I've just pushed myself so hard, to even try to get to the phase where I'm creating enough to be able to build revenue, and I just wake up feeling like shit every day, and it's like, and I say that as a sober person, it's so easy for all of us to, hurt ourselves in that way. So I think you're absolutely right, finding the identifiers of wealth in many different ways other than revenue success, and seeing who the people are behind, which is a big challenge, I will say, when you're being marketed to by people, because they only show you what they want you to see, of course. And then, I feel for us as SMEs, because, we have so much hope for what we want to make for ourselves and for our life and for our business, and then to be let down by somebody who, isn't exactly what they said on the packet is, such a challenging experience. So, I think that is an important lesson, that to look a little bit more behind, maybe trust your gut a little bit, and scratch below the surface for sure. So I want to shift gears a little bit, and I want to talk about, you have this amazing book, and it's a great read, but you also have a bloody bookshop, which has blown my mind. So just as we've just talked about all of this incredible work that you're doing, and passivity and a push to create the product, and then, one to many, all of that as a really great business model. And now you have a bookshop. So please talk me through what's happening here.
It's absolutely illogical. The ironic thing is I actually sold a big chunk. Well, I sort of closed down a big chunk of my business. The Clever Copywriting School is still there, but the membership, the passive part of it, I closed down because I wanted to work less. And the day after I did that, I was walking along the beach and I got a message on my phone saying that the local bookshop was going to be closed because they couldn't financially keep it going. And I took about 24 hours to think it through. I did look at the figures and they were appalling, and it was losing money hand over fist. But I thought, this is an opportunity that's never going to come up again. And it's very rare that this would ever come up. And I'm not even sure it was ever something I ever wanted, but suddenly I wanted it more than anything. And so I went for it. So now I'm in a low profit margin. My digital business profit margin, after everything's said and done, is about 45%, right? Profit margin for the bookshop is about 1% a year, right? So it does not make money. It's a self-fulfilling entity. It employs my staff, doesn't pay me at the moment, but God, it's beautiful. And I think what I needed after years of this horrendous gladiatorial pit of entrepreneurialism and hoo-ha and income flexing and grinning and throwing confetti on Instagram, I needed some reality. And so now I have a physical place where I go that smells of books. I talk to old ladies about romance books, and I love it. I get to do window displays. I get to go to community event. I'm doing an old people's home on Friday, taking some books in. It makes me no money at all, but it is utterly joyful and fulfilling. And I feel part of the community in a really meaningful way. And that, my friend, is priceless.
I couldn't imagine how it wouldn't be. There's a certain feeling I get when I go into a bookstore. And I think many people will relate to this. And, I have such visions of myself being like Margaret Atwood in my later years, just like just writing these really, incredible stories. But I get such a feeling when I walk into a bookstore that it's almost hard to describe. It's like I get tears in my eyes. The smell,
Magical.
the feeling,
Magical.
it is. You just think, well, look at what's here. Like, this is just so phenomenal. So I can absolutely imagine how that has contributed to your overall happiness.
Well, this is it. And, none of it would have been possible without this passive income journey. I don't think I would ever have taken the risk of doing this if I was still a workaday copywriter, going from job to job, from pitch to pitch. So, it's the fulfilling of a dream that I didn't even realize I had. And I've also secured myself a bit of a future in terms of the community. I've got a spot, I've got a place. I can't wait for Christmas. I can't wait to do the window displays. We've got a Father Christmas coming in to give kids, that's and it just feels like real life. I've spent a lot of years making things that physically don't exist. They're digital products, right? So now I have real tangible stuff. I've got my hands in the dirt of life again, and it feels wonderful.
It's beautiful. What has it done for your day-to-day life in the running of your digital and online product-based business? What does that look like
It's
now?
gone through my business like napalm. I can't even describe it. So I'd never run a proper e-commerce business. Obviously I have stores. I've never run a retail business. I've never had a physical property, where I have a lease, and it's added more staff. Financial stress, trying to understand whether I get 10 copies of Jeffrey Archer's new book or 7. It's mental. It's been a massive learning curve, and I'm 50. My brain isn't what it was. So it had a seismic impact on my digital business in that I couldn't do it. My launches for my courses this year have not been as good. My dad also passed away this year, which was horrendous. So it's been my annus horribilis, but also my annus fabulousness as well. And now the equilibrium is coming back. So I don't work in the bookshop full time. I do the odd day here and there. I open or I close. And then day to day, I work in my digital business online. And I probably do about 12 hours a week of performance, podcast, masterclasses, and then admin. So I'm still not working a huge amount, I guess. I've just got used to not working really much at all. And now with the bookshop, I've had to learn to work again, which makes me sound like a complete knob. But yeah, working in retail is savage. It's really hard work. And it's been an awakening, but I'm enjoying it. It's good. And the dog is coming back in now, Kim. I apologize. Hopefully he's not making too much noise.
He's looking very adorable and being absolutely perfect. So that's no issue at all. It's a real podcast for real people who have real lives.
You did say that. Yeah.
So you led on, I guess, a little bit there in some of the words you used about support team. So, those who you bring into your business, of course, the people that are helping you run the bookstore, but also your digital business. What has that journey looked like, getting people on board to help you make what you make? Because I think that's a really important thing to explore, because so often we think, I'll do it all, I'll be able to market it all, I'll be able to have this one person business working from home. But what does that support journey look like for you?
Yeah, I never wanted to be responsible for someone else's mortgage, not even my own, if I'm honest. So I resisted moving to an agency model as a copywriter because I didn't want to get staff, right? And then ironically, I went to this passive income, which I thought I could do myself. And now I have more staff than I ever would have had in an agency. So, one of the biggest lessons I've learned is you cannot do it all on your own. You practically can. You can learn each skill, you can put different hats on, you can divide your week up to have a finance day and a creative day. But it's not really about the skill set. It's about the support and just being part of a gang and having fresh ideas and new ideas and having people challenge your stupid ideas and support you when you're winning and console you when you're losing. So my team is all virtual apart from the people in the shop. I have tried to have people work physically with me, but I just can't deal with it after working on my own too long. So everyone's virtual. Some people work 8 hours a week, some people work 2 hours a week. I've got a huge range of skill sets. Everyone's a subcontractor. I've got a couple of employees. But yeah, it works for me. It's dialable, uppable, and dialable, downable. I'm ultimately committed and responsible for my employees because they're employees, but everyone else is a subcontractor. So I'm well within my rights to say, you know what, December's looking a bit quiet. I might wind your hours down a little bit, and that's just what it is, right? I'm not fully responsible for them. And so I do have a degree of flexibility and freedom. I don't think I could work in a business where I had literally 40 employees. I think that would be too stressful for me.
If there is somebody who's looking at your book, or, thinking about maybe I need to make something, or just a little bit enticed by the title, because the title is pretty contentious, isn't it? It's like, and that's what people have to realize. That I listened to a podcast recently. It was Diary of a CEO, and the title was something like, porn is ruining everybody's lives with dopamine. Like, I have absolutely no interest in that episode. But I went in because I know Diary of a CEO is going to deliver some goods. And I read the chapters and I was like, oh, God, this is so much more than that. And I think genuinely that title was one sentence that the guest had said in the whole thing. It was alluded to one tiny piece of a 2.5-hour conversation. So the titles we know are there to engage. And I think we all need to think about that when we pick up something. So I will leave that there, because as I've learned from the book and as I've learned from you, there is so much more involved to get to that phase where you have the opportunity to earn money while you sleep. So for the person who is on the edge thinking about it, what would you say to them?
I would say that this is not the story of my success. This is a literal roadmap and handbook for you to have success. Like it's almost anal in its right. I try and keep it light and funny, but it's the exact tech. It's the actual words to use in the first email that you send. But also it's the freedom to stop looking for a big idea. Right? We're all thinking we want to make something amazing that we can put on Dragon's Den or Shark Tank and it'll make us billions. It's not about a big idea. It's often about lots and lots of tiny little ideas, just finding a way to sell what you're selling slightly differently. You don't need to learn anything more. You don't need to do any more courses. Just package what you're already selling slightly differently or find a new way in. So you don't need to be a genius. You don't need to be a financial guru or a tech head to do what I've done in this book. You can literally be exactly who you are with the exact skills you have today and just find a new perspective on selling them in a slightly different way.
That's an excellent piece of advice. I like that a lot. Where do you hope to see your multiple business types and revenue streams and all of the things? Where do you hope to see it grow to in the short term?
I don't want it to grow anymore. I'm coming back down the mountain. I've had my growth. I've had my glory days. I just want a nice, easy life now. I want to have a decent income. And I want to have lovely days where I talk to cool people like this about stuff. So I do have another book in me, another business book. And then I intend to don a woolly jumper and sit like Margaret Atwood and write my novels that will not sell, but I will enjoy writing them.
Oh, you just absolutely painted my ideal future there again. So sounds pretty fantastic. Kate, of course, it has been like an absolute pleasure to chat with you today. I've had a lot of laughs and a lot of words that I'm going to be using in my vernacular now. I really can't get slippery funnel out of my head, but it's been, such a joy to talk to you today and hear a little bit more about, the person behind the book, behind the business, and, what you're putting out into the world. It's a gift to give to the listener to lift up the lid a little bit on businesses. So what can we do to support you in return?
We can head off to katetoon.com and buy the book, or you can get in a camper van or whatever vehicle you have and drive to the Umina on the Central Coast and come and visit my bookshop and buy a book.
I love that. We'll have to make sure that that's scheduled right about the time that Santa's going to be there so everyone can enjoy your beautiful window dressing. Kate, it really has been a pleasure to chat with you today. Thank you for spending the time with me.
Thanks, Kim. It's been fab.
Thank you for listening to Unemployed and Afraid, the podcast for small business builders with your host, me, Kim Curtin. If you love it, you can say thanks with a star rating and a review. And of course, join the community on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Find us at Unemployed and Afraid wherever you're hanging out, and I'll see you there.